Hi and welcome to Scale Model Basics. I'm Aaron Skinner and we're taking a look at dot filters. Now first of all, we should probably discuss what filters are. Well, Kenneth Childress did a nice video a while back. You can find a link to that in the description below, where he dealt with the idea of straight filters, which involves applying thin oil or enamel paint over the surface of the model. And you do that panel by panel, and what it does is it subtly shifts the tone of the underlying paint, and that shift will depend a little bit on the color that you use. Dot filters use a similar idea, but instead of applying thin oil paint, we're going to apply dots of pure oil paint to the surface and then blend them on that surface with clean thinner. So what are you going to need? Well, you're probably going to have to start with a variety of oil colors. We'll get into color choice in a little bit, but feel free to use pretty much anything, because as you'll see, the color shift can be, the variety of colors can really apply some drama to the surface of your model. You're going to need some thinner. In this case, I'm using odorless paint or odorless mineral spirits. You can also use terpenoid or odorless paint thinner, that kind of thing. Anything along those lines that will thin the paint that you're using, in this case oils, will work. And then you need some brushes. You need a fine brush to apply the dots of oil color, and you need some flat brushes to be able to blend that on the surface. So the first thing you're going to do when applying dot filters is apply a little dab of oil paint to a palette. I'm using this nice glass palette from Redgrass. We actually sell these in the Combat Hobby Store. You can find a link in the description below. You don't need a whole lot of paint when you're doing this. A little oil paint goes a long way on a model. And just keep going until you have all of the colors that you want on your palette. And then you can take your fine brush and you just want to pick up a little bit of each one, and you just put random dots across the surface. You can vary the size. There's not really a plan for this. It's a good idea to wipe the brush off between colors, and then you just keep going. Okay. So once you've got all those on, then you can take your flat brush, dip it into your clean thinner, remove the bulk of the thinner that's on there, and then you just want to stroke it down the surface, and you can see that it draws that color down the surface. Now between each stroke, you will want to wipe it off because you don't want to blend the colors all together. So you can just keep working this. I should have noted earlier that you want to do this on flat or semi-gloss paint because you want the paint to adhere to the surface. And you just want to keep going until there's almost nothing left of the original paint. And then you can just move over, and you can see when you have multiple colors that it will gradually blend those two. On vertical surfaces, you can stroke down like this. But on horizontal surfaces, you can use a slightly different technique, because on the vertical surfaces, you're kind of mimicking the way fluid might flow down, rain or other liquids might flow down the surface. But on horizontal surfaces, you can use a scrubbing technique to just blend those dots in, and again, subtly change the surface color. So then, when you're basically done, and you can keep working on this until you're satisfied, you can see that you end up with these subtle shifts. Now this is a little more extreme than I necessarily would have wanted it to be. I think that the gray primer that this is being applied to is absorbing the paint a little bit more, so I'm going to work in smaller areas next time and not put as much paint on. But those were using this top line with sort of basic browns and oranges, like rust or something along those lines, that would be suitable for certain colors of paint, whether it's, browns or grays. This is where we get into color choice. If you're applying to a gray, you're going to want to use colors that might be complementary to that and are going to just sort of shift it in a way that is in keeping with that color. So with this gray, I'm going to apply a few dots of white. And like I said, I'm going to keep it a little bit more restricted this time so I don't end up with the same paint soaking in. So we'll just apply a couple dots of these colors. Black. You want to go easy with black because it will change very quickly. And then this kind of brownish green sludgy color. Okay, so I'm working in a smaller area this time, so we'll see how that works. So again, make sure the brush is pretty clean. And same thing as before, just stroke down, blot off, stroke down again. You do want to work a section at a time, whether it's a panel or a surface, because like I said, like you've seen, the oil paints can get a little too carried away. You can see that the black really does make a substantial difference, so that's why you don't want to use a lot of it unless you're working with a very dark gray color, maybe Panzer gray. But that's where using the highlight colors in contrast will be a good addition. So you can do some strategic placement of the dots. If you place them towards the top of the panel, what you're going to get is more straight downward streaking and less streaks that start higher up on the model. And that's what happens when you go back over it without blotting the brush dry. Blotting the excess paint off, you get those weird muddy lines. And so you can see that you end up with a different tonal variety between that and the upper color. So then what about just going wild with color choices? Well, you can do that too, and it will just end up with a slightly different effect. In this case, let's just do a variety of goofy colors on this. You have bright blues and greens and reds. So, yep, kind of looks like a little bit like a clown car on that panel. So we'll just go ahead and blend it. Use this serrated edge brush for this one. And again, you can see that that changes up the tone of those panels. So you can see how it worked on that sample with the primer gray. Let's see how it works in practice on a painted model, in this case the Whippet that we've used for some other demonstrations. I'm going to start with some complementary colors, starting with a couple of dots of bright green on this panel. And then this darker green. And then this odd olive drabby green color, just for some contrast. Okay, and then the same as before. Take our brush, get it damp with thinner, blot out most of it, and then it's just a matter of stroking down. And as that dries, you should be able to see a subtle shift in the tone of that panel. Now we could go a little bit more radical, and we'll do some of the brighter colors this time, just to see what that looks like. So going a little outside the box, we'll apply some blue. And this brightish red color. I know this seems a bit extreme, but once you see it sort of blend onto the surface, you get the idea that it's less about the color choice and more about the effect on the finished model, the tone shift that it makes. And maybe this orangish color. Okay, and so then, same thing. And so again, as that dries, you'll see that this has more of that red going on than the other panel, which is a little greener looking. And they differ from the other panels that have not had the filters added to them yet. So that's how dot filters work. It's a neat technique. The nice thing is you can adjust it, you can refine it, and really the door's open to you for you to choose whatever you want to do to make your model look unique. Thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Skinner, and we'll see you next time.